Three, two, one.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, granitegrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from granitegrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, this is Grok Talk. I forgot to tell you who our guests are today at the beginning of the segment because we couldn't get Rick Perry on thanks to a scheduling misunderstanding. It's the difference between the body of the text of the email and the subject line. When you change something in the body of the text and you don't make a change in the subject line, people make assumptions about the conversation, and that's what happened, and that's why we didn't have Rick Perry today. We have Ann Marie Banfield is in the studio with us. We're going to spend the next half hour talking to her. After that, we have Jim Kofalt from the 603 Alliance, and then Mark Lucas from Americans for Prosperity is going to talk to us about their road to reform. So, Ann Marie, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in early so you could listen to the chickens and the squirrels
and learn a lot.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen here. So we're going to talk about education, and there's way too much to talk about in 30 minutes, obviously. Right. But we did have something that happened this week.
Yes.
We can start with. The governor vetoed some legislation that would have given parents some rights with regard to objectionable material.
Right, which was HB 332.
Okay, so why don't you give us a real quick about what the bill is and then what happened and what we think we need to go
Sure.
with that.
This was sponsored by Victoria Sullivan, who is a freshman state rep who is just on fire for parental rights and all good things. She sits on the House Education Committee. She's from Manchester, and she's just one of those parents, I think, that got involved, that sees what's going on in her kid's school, and decided, I'm going to do something about this. She was on the PTA, a real good person, and I think that she just thought, maybe I'm going to run for a state rep, and won. Ended up on the House Education Committee, and she sponsored a bill. It's HB 332, if anybody wants to go look it up. And it basically just says that parents, should have the ability to see materials ahead of time that may be objectionable, like basically sex education materials, things like that. Just so they can see them, just be transparent and decide for themselves what they want to do. She had heard from some parents that were finding this information out after the fact, after their kids have gone through classes and anybody.
Mommy, I learned about anal sex today.
Well,
what?
Yeah, not a good way to find out that your kids are learning things that maybe either you have a problem with. She brought up some good points, and I think other people brought up some good points in the hearings, which is, I just want to see the information. It's not necessarily always to say, no, I don't want my kids to learn this, but maybe it's more of a way to explain things before your child goes into the class, maybe have a discussion with them after the class. There's always this assumption that parents, don't want their kids to know this information. Sometimes parents simply want to make sure that it's age appropriate. Maybe I don't really think there's parents that want to keep their kids, buried in the sand, their heads buried in the sand, but maybe it's just not the right time that the school chooses.
I think we talked about this on Facebook. All children are different.
Yes.
Some children are ready for certain subjects before other children.
Yes.
And some very much many years before.
Right.
Even if you just look at the way children develop. My daughter versus her friends.
Yep.
Some of them developed into their teenage years much sooner than she did.
Right.
So they were boy crazy, and she was like, what's the big deal?
Yes.
So those things all matter. And
right.
Parents really are the only people who are going to know what they're ready for.
Right. I remember with my own daughter, who's now in college, sitting down with her and attempting to, have some of these discussions with her. And I can remember, even in 6th grade, I sat down with her to discuss a few things, and her reaction was, I could tell immediately she just wasn't ready. And, I think it's about respect. It's about respecting that child. And I came back with the information when she was in 8th grade. And even then I felt like, after we had the discussion, I kind of felt like maybe maybe that was even a little bit too early for her. But where's the respect for these kids who are not ready for this information? I mean, to me, that's what we're missing. And so her bill was just simply to make things transparent. Just make sure that parents understand what's going to be taught ahead of time, and let them decide. Let them talk to their kids if that's what they choose to do. And so Governor Hassan vetoed it on Friday, and this passed the House, this passed the Senate, and clearly the people spoke. They spoke through the representatives, and Governor Hassan again. And this isn't the first time this legislative session that we've seen this, because she vetoed HB 6032, which allows parents the option to opt their kids out of this standardized assessment, which they can do now. But it would have been nice to put it into law for the parents who ran into administrators who were trying to tell them that they couldn't do this. But I think what we're starting to see, and I don't think you guys are going to be shocked by this, but we have a governor who really stands up against parental rights.
Well, I'm going to. Am I on, by the way?
Yeah, you certainly are.
I can't hear myself for whatever reason.
I can hear you.
God struck you deaf.
Maybe that's a sign for me.
Might not be a bad thing, really.
Yeah.
What? Oh. Hand me a cheeseburger.
I think you've got the question partially right. It is about respect, but it isn't for the kids. It is for the parents.
Yes,
but it also
both.
comes
Yes.
down, I tend to be a very simple person, even though I say a lot of words at times. But I try to bring things down to principles. And it's something I've been seeing, as you well know, over the years. I've got it on video. Who owns my kid is really what it comes down to.
Right.
And what you're running into with both of these, was it 583?
You didn't build that.
No,
323?
323
Right.
and 603.
Yep.
You're seeing the left showing the disdain that parents aren't necessary. We know better than the parents do for what's best for your own kids. I mean,
Right.
I've got it on video where we have taught your kids so that they know better than you do.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
we've got
exactly.
Virginia Berry in writing saying
Yeah.
things that basically say that the schools and the superintendents are the ones who make these decisions, not the parents.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. It's interesting, because I sit before the education committees, and so I listen to the legislators speak, and luckily we don't hear that a lot, but we do hear that from some legislators, and it's kind of shocking. And I think when parents are now coming to these these hearings and testifying, especially through the Common Core whole reform movement, you've got parents who are now up in arms across the country and in New Hampshire. They're now starting to come to these committees and testifying, and I think what's shocking to them is that that they're being dismissed. And we do have that. We have legislators who are basically saying, you don't know what's good for your children.
And that this is where I need to take folks like you gently to task. We need to know who's saying that kind of stuff. Let us put it out there. Video would be best, but if you can scribble down day, time, people saying exactly their own words, that's all we need.
Right.
What did they say in their own words?
Yep.
And
It helps. You're right.
and get that out there to show such disdain. This is really the big cultural problem. We've got all these Republicans, Doug Scammon being the foremost example I like to pick on because he made himself such a big target. Oh, we have to forget all about these social issues, just concentrate on the fiscal ones. Well, as you well know, all social issues have a fiscal
Yes.
cost. And you're seeing it because these people in government are saying, we know better, therefore, that's the social issue, and we have to spend this much to take care of it. Mm-hmm. And these Republicans are wusses. They won't stand up, or they're just, we'll just spend a little more, we'll manage it a little bit better, we like being Democrat juniors. I'm no longer using Democrat light. I'm going Democrat juniors.
Because they are the inferiors in the partnership. They roll over and play dead. And
Junior!
and we can argue about the trade agreement. I think Republicans are taking their traditional position, but I think Obama is going to abuse their trust.
Well, that's a given. It really doesn't matter what they do. He's going to do what he wants.
And
anyway.
the problem is at the end of the negotiation, they are supposed to give an up or down vote. If he changes the rules and they don't like it, they're supposed to vote against it. You're laughing because you don't think they're going to.
Ann Marie's going, how'd we go from there to there?
No.
Well, that's true.
But what
She's
is,
segueing out of her education.
Back
So
to
what-
education.
so what is the remedy to
Well,
a governor
yeah.
that has vetoed these, and yet in the House we have the Democrat-appointed speaker who's nominally a Republican, a good conservative Republican if you listen to
depending on
Governor
who you
Papa
ask.
Smurf, because all Republicans are conservatives. How can we change this?
Well, I think parents, unfortunately, sit on the couch and a lot of times don't want to get involved and think all is fine until they see an actual assault on their rights. And so I think that in some ways these kind of measures, when she vetoes something, does wake up a lot of people. I think Common Core is waking up a lot of people when their kids are coming home and they can't even help their kids on their own homework. I think that's a lot of times how people wake up. Unfortunately, I think that they kind of check out of the system and then they become engaged when they feel either they're being attacked or something's wrong. So, in some measures, I think that we're starting to see an awakening amongst parents. And Common Core, for all the reasons I'm fighting against it, that's been the good part of it. It's awoken the sleeping giant. But what's the remedy is to find legislators who support parental rights. Find legislators who understand this. Run for office like Victoria did. I mean, she put herself out there. She was on the PTA. She saw what was going on, and she decided, you know what, I'm going to do something. And unfortunately, her bill was vetoed, but it's a good bill, and maybe we can override it. If we're trying to get parents to write and support override for 603, add this one to the list. Parents need to start writing in to their legislators and say, look, if we can get enough legislators to support this override, we can get this passed into law. But I think the remedy is to find good legislators, and if you can't find them, put your name on the ticket.
Is there? I don't know what the votes were. Is there any chance of a veto override on 332 or something?
I don't recall exactly that. My guess is it probably was party line. I think it's going to be tough to get an override. But we're trying it with 603 right now, and 603 again, just to clarify, is right now they have a standardized assessment. It's a Common Core standardized assessment given in all schools. Many parents pulled their kids out of it. It's a lousy test. It's not even a good academic test. And what we found was parents who would go into the school and say, I don't want my child to take this test. I'm exercising my parental rights. The administrators would come back and say, oh, sorry, you don't have those rights. You have to force basically your child to take this test. And so we had issues. And we even had some parents who had to hire an attorney and pay $250 for a letter to say, yes, they have these rights, and no, they don't. Their children do not have to take this test. So, and I talked to a student the other day who was going to opt herself out in Co-Brown and got pushback from the administration, ended up being basically felt pressured into taking the test. So we need it in law. There's no reason not to put it in law. Now, Governor Hassan said something about, she's concerned we might lose some federal funding.
Oh, that's always always the reason.
Yes, and as a researcher, I'm sorry to awaken the parents, but it always boils down to money. To me, it doesn't always boil down to what's best for your kids. So there's this concern that if we pass something into law showing parental rights or, expressing parental rights in law, that we're going to lose some kind of federal funding, because we do have a tyrant in the White House that threatens these things.
I know the perfect answer.
Yeah.
Civil disobedience.
Yes.
And it's called Christmas trees. She's going, what?
Yeah,
Christmas
yeah.
trees. Well, we've all seen with the school lunches, all of the Twitter pics with the hashtag, thanks Michelle Obama, with
Yeah.
the execrable lunches. Well, if the students can't opt out, we need to do a Common Core Christmas tree hashtag, which you just get all the kids to say, Christmas tree, the tests, which means, here's my answers, Christmas tree. And, and if enough people do that, the elite and the administrators are complaining that, we have to have so many people to do this to get the money.
Yes.
And to make it statistically valid testing.
Yep.
Well, if all the kids are Christmas treeing the tests, they're still getting the money, but the the results are meaningless.
Yeah.
I mean, you have accomplished the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the kids all get to go to the parties afterwards that the administrators use our tax money to bribe the kids with.
Yep.
Bribing kids, bribing the scholastic citizens. Gosh, it's just like in miniature.
We're going to take a break.
It is.
Go ahead. I'll let you talk first, and then I'll cut you off.
We'll teach them to be just like good, obedient serfs, like we're trying to make the citizens. We're going to steal their money and then use it to bribe the states to oppress them.
There you go.
Yep.
That's
Yay.
it.
All right. Great break. Be right back. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Rock Talk.